My grandma didn't have much, at least not in the way the world counts it. But she had wisdom. She knew how to stretch a dollar, make something out of nothing, and live well without needing more. Today, I want to share some of the most powerful lessons she taught me about being frugal, resourceful, and self-sufficient, and why these things really do matter in a modern world. If you are new to my channel, welcome. And if you're coming back, welcome back. My name is Jenna Lee, and I am here restoring home, family, and spirit through tried and true homemaking skills. I am just starting out this ordinary day by making some yogurt. I've had my yogurt incubated in the crock pot overnight, and now I've strained it. I don't always strain my yogurt, but when I feel like it's a little too runny, then I like to strain it, store it in some mason jars, and put it in the fridge, and it tends to get a little bit thicker after it's been sitting in the fridge and cooling for a while. Every week we get a couple of gallons of raw fresh cow's milk, and I like to save half a gallon to make into yogurt. And it's really easy in your crock pot. You just have to remember the timing, and you put it on low for 3 hours, then you turn it off for 2.5 hours, and then cover it with a towel and put the lid on and let it sit for 8 to 12 hours. And then you have beautiful yogurt. So my grandma did grow up farming with her dad in Idaho, but in her older years, I always remember her having a little garden in her backyard, and she was always growing a garden every summer. So the first lesson I learned from my grandma was to grow your own food. And she was always canning her food, getting fruits and vegetables from her friends and neighbors, and preserving it. She had a food storage in her basement. And when we went to Grandma's house, my favorite thing to eat from her food pantry was her dilly beans. She pickled green beans, and they were my favorite. I also loved her pickled beets and her, was it currant jelly that she would serve on her waffles? She also was the one who gave me my first canning book when I got married. My grandma didn't call it homesteading or slow living. She just lived life. That's how she survived. A lot of our grandparents grew up during the World War II era, and they learned these skills as second nature. At least here in American culture, we have pulled so far away from that way of living. We've become so dependent on, the grocery stores and companies to provide us with things that we need. We've forgotten how to provide for ourselves. Throughout my life, I've always been taught the simple principle from the Bible: if you are prepared, you shall not fear. And I want to emphasize the shall not fear part of that phrase. It's good to know the skills, to be prepared for the rainy day when maybe you are without a job or a natural disaster might happen. It's good to know how to help your family and help yourself. There's going to be times in your life when those things happen. No matter what the economy does or who you are, life just happens. And it's imperative in today's world to make your dollar stretch as far as you can, especially with the prices of groceries at this time. Growing your own food, knowing how to cook with it and how not to waste it, I would say is absolutely necessary for surviving in today's world. Last year, we raised all of our own meat chickens, and boy, did I love having our freezer full of chickens throughout the year. One thing I did learn through that experience is that raising your own meat and doing some of these homesteading skills here on your own property is not always cheaper than what you're going to be getting at the store. But what it does teach you how to do is how to do it yourself and how to rely on nature's cycle to keep going, to keep providing you with food. We also learned how to store our own seeds last year. We kept a lot of our own vegetable seeds and started our own garden by replanting our seeds from last year. So the best things in life that God has provided for us through nature are things that multiply and regenerate themselves, like sourdough that just keeps on giving, plants that grow back every year. And if you know how to reproduce your chickens right, you wouldn't have to buy them from the livestock market every year. One skill that I fear we have forgotten is resourcefulness. It has always been a survival skill. If something broke, my grandma fixed it. If she didn't have something, she found a way around it. And she didn't rely on convenience, she relied on creativity. Back in the day, they would sew their buttons back on their shirts. They actually would turn flour sacks into aprons, especially during the wartime era. And in a sense, my grandma taught me that you don't need more. You need to use what you already have and care for it. I had told you that I would probably just replace my white apron that you've seen me wear 100 times on this channel. But then again, after thinking about it, it didn't seem like that was very in line with my values. So I decided it would be better to pull out my darning needle and just sew up that big hole. And yes, it's covered in stains, and yes, now it has a big stitch in it, but it's an apron, and that's what it's meant for. It's meant to get dirty, it's meant to be used, and it's meant to protect your beautiful clothes. And so now it's stitched, it's fixed, and hopefully will be used many more times to come. If you haven't figured it out by now from the name of my channel, I do come from a pioneer heritage. I come from a legacy of women who made do with what they had, and they cooked from scratch. And I like to live on that legacy. I make as many things as I can from scratch. I think of things my family loves, and I try to opt out from buying it from the store by making it myself. And one thing my kids love to have for lunch, especially on a Sunday afternoon after church, is homemade macaroni and cheese. So I've already got my noodles boiled up, and you simply, in the same exact pan that you boiled your noodles in, saute a couple tablespoons of butter, throw in a couple tablespoons of flour, put some milk in there and whisk it all together until it starts to thicken. And then pour in your cheddar cheese or Colby Jack cheese or whatever you have in the freezer or fridge and stir until it becomes a bubbly, cheesy, thick sauce. Add a little bit of salt and pepper. And if it gets too thick, just pour in a little bit more milk. Or if it's too thin, pour in a little bit more flour or cheese. Whisk it all together. And it is the most delicious, melty, cheesy mac and cheese your family's ever going to have. And you're never going to want to buy it from the store again. It comes together in minutes. When I was a little girl at my grandma's house, I was very wise about what I put on my plate because I knew that my grandma would make me finish everything on my plate. In fact, that woman never wasted any food at all, almost to a default. And I'm sure your grandma was probably the same way. But can you really blame the woman who grew up during the World War II era? I'm sure food was very scarce, and she learned the value of having any food at all and to use it wisely. Of course, making banana bread out of old bananas is a no-brainer and a delicious treat and snack for your family. You can also be freezing your fruit before it goes bad. Just keeping a good inventory of what's in your fridge is a good way of making sure that you are using all of the fruits and vegetables and meats that are inside of your fridge. Rarely anymore do I make a grocery list based on a recipe and go searching for those ingredients. Rather, I look through my pantry and my fridge and I find what needs to be used, and I make the meal plans based on what needs to be used and what we have plenty of and what is in season as well. Whatever's coming out of the garden, whatever we have lots of, whatever needs to get used up, that's what the meals are being made out of. The beautiful thing is that nature goes through cycles of abundance, and when we take advantage of the cycles of abundance and store those things up, whether it's eggs or whatever vegetables in season or apples in the fall, when we preserve those things, then we can have an abundance. Our grandmothers knew the art of doing laundry well, something I fear our generation has maybe forgotten, or just maybe they weren't taught, I'm not sure. But my grandma sure knew how to get a stain out of her clothing. They knew how to take care of certain garments and keep them well, and they loved to iron. So doing my laundry well is a skill that I am learning at the moment. Nothing ever went to waste in Grandma's house. Leftover vegetables went into soups, stale bread became croutons or bread pudding, and even worn out clothes were turned into cleaning rags or quilts. I do a lot of baking here in the house, and some things don't always turn out as planned, and sometimes the bread just goes stale. So I'm making some breadcrumbs out of drying some old stale sourdough bread, putting it in the oven. We're going to be using that in some of our meatballs that we're making for tonight's dinner. And the rest of the bread will be made into croutons. So I really did base tonight's dinner just off of that stale bread that was sitting there on the counter. Frugality is not something that everybody knows how to do. It's something that we need to be taught. And if you aren't naturally frugal, I believe you can learn to be frugal. Most of the time we are taught frugality out of necessity, just not having enough at some point in our life and learning how to be resourceful with what we have because we have to. But I think being frugal is more than that. Being frugal isn't limiting. In a way, it can be freedom. Freedom from constantly needing to buy, freedom from debt, and freedom to be content with less. Throughout our entire marriage, we have lived off of one income. My husband is an educator. And life has always been about where our priorities are at. And because of that, we have learned to save, invest, buy used cars, and learn to be content with what we have. So being frugal, resourceful, self-sufficient, those are all skills that have helped us survive an increasingly expensive world. If you are having trouble with having a frugal mindset, I strongly recommend that you spend less time online, less time scrolling through your Instagram, seeing what others have, and thinking of what you don't have. I recommend spending more time in nature and less time in the shopping malls. And my husband will be shocked by the thing that I just said because I do like to shop. But I can tell you from firsthand experience that not having your life focused on so many material things will help you be happy with the simple things that you already have. And I believe these lessons are more important than ever. If you are on a journey to live more simply, steward your resources wisely, and build a home that thrives, you're not alone. Our grandmothers walked this path before us. If this video resonated with you, give it a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs a little encouragement, and don't forget to subscribe. You'll always find delicious recipes in the description box below, and I will see you guys next week for another video. Love you lots!